So in the first video, we in this series, we looked at how you might go about applying textures, simple textures to simple objects. In the second video, we talked about how you might go about lighting them. Very simple three-point lighting setup. And now we're going to go ahead and do a batch render. And the first thing I'm going to do is create an animated camera. When I talk about batch render, what I really mean is just rendering out a series of still frames. We can render out a single frame just by clicking on the render button here, and that will render out a single frame. But what we want to do is render out many frames, and in order to do that we have to create some animation. So what we're going to do is go to our outliner, that's Window, Outliner, and select the camera. And where is our camera? There it is, our shot camera. And we are going to unlock it. I'm going to close out the outliner. I'm going to unlock the camera. So I'm going to drag select these values, the X's and Y's, and unlock it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this shot 99 frames long. So down here I'm going to set this to 99, and I'm going to set the range slider also to 99 frames. And at frame 1, making sure that I've got the camera still selected, shot camera, that's good, I'm going to set a keyframe. So we've set a keyframe now on the camera at frame 1. And now if I go to frame 99, and I'm now going to zoom in on the what am I going to do? I'm going to select the camera here. I'm going to go to the Move tool, press W on the keyboard, or you can click up there, and I'm going to move that camera in towards the bowl of fruit. And actually, if I go Panels, Look Through Selected, then I can look through the selected camera and I can zoom in on the oranges in the bowl. And that's going to be our final frame. So I'm going to hit S there to set a key there. And now I'm actually going to go to our, because we're animating now, I'm going to go to our three-way split animation menu, which you will find under Window, Saved Layouts, Animation. And annoyingly, it's just out of view on my screen. You'll just have to trust me down there. And this gives us over here, our shot camera. That's what we want there. On the left hand side, our perspective view, that's what we want there, and then the graph editor underneath. And I'm going to hit A in the graph editor, A for all, and that will show all the curves. And what I'm going to do is select all of these curves here at the end, and I'm going to flatten those tangents by using the Flatten Tangents button there. And I'm going to select them all at the beginning and flatten those there. So what we're going to get when we play it back is actually we want to be in this window, we're going to get a slow truck in, speeding up in the middle and slowing down at the end. Okay, so that's what we're getting, and we're going to slow in on those oranges in the bowl, which looks suspiciously like primitive spheres, which is exactly what they are. Now let me select that camera again, and actually what I might do is no, I think that's fine. I think that's fine for now. We've created an animated camera. We could fiddle with it, we could make it prettier. Let's just play back in this range, but I think that's fine for now. So what I want to do is now do a batch render, and in order to do that we need to go to the render settings, which is this little button up here, and I'm going to open up the render settings in Maya, and you will want to make a note of these settings because you will want to actually, before I go into render settings, let's just make sure that we have in fact set to our project. So set project, textures, light and render, that's the project I'm in. Set. So as soon as you generate images, you've got to make sure that Maya knows where they're going to. Okay, so back to render settings, that's this one here, and we're going to go through these tabs and make sure that everything is in order. Now we're going to render using Maya software. which is standard stuff. And we're going to go through the common tab here and make sure that we've got everything lined up. Now, image format, what are we going to render? We could render JPEGs, we can render IFFs, but I'm going to pick TIFFs. TIFFs are good to render, so we're going to render those. And we don't want to render a single frame. What we want to do is pick this code here, name.star.ext. That's the one you want. Frame padding set to 4. I'm not going to go into the reason for all of these settings, just make a note of this so that you remember it. Start frame 1, end frame 99. By frame 1, in other words, we're rendering every frame. Down here under renderable cameras, you want to pick the shot camera. If you pick the perspective camera or some other camera, it will not render properly, or you will not render the correct view. So always pick the shot camera. Image size, I'm going to suggest rendering 1280, full 1280. Typically you want to that's UK broadcast PAL, or is it 1024 by 576? Let's try that, 1024 by 576. And oh, wait a minute. 1024 by 576 is what we want, so I'm just going to enter that manually. And then I'm going to close, and that's it. And now you've got your renders, you've got your render settings set up. So now you've got to go to the rendering menu. That's now we're in the polygons menu. We shouldn't be in that. We should be in the animation menu. But for rendering, we should be in the rendering menu. So we click on that, click on rendering, and now you're going to go and find this drop-down menu here, which is render, and go to batch render. Let's just open up the options box there. Okay, use all available processors. That doesn't really affect us because we're not networked. And go to batch render and close. And continue. And now, if you go down to this box down here, Maya is now telling you what it's doing. And it's now rendering frames. And actually, annoyingly, the actual frame numbers are slightly off the screen. It's rendering these frames quite quickly, so I've probably just about got time to go off and have a cup of tea and then come back. So I'm going to pause the video until the render is done. This is usually when animators go off and goof off when you're rendering out frames. So I'm going to pause the video and come back when the render is done. Okay, so I've got a little message here saying rendering completed. See Maya render log for information. Okay, so now my render's been done. Now I've got to go and find those images, and this is where setting projects becomes so important. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on my start menu. That's the little icon on the bottom left-hand corner of your screen if you're using Windows, and I'm going to go into Documents. So you want to go into the Documents folder, and that's going to mean Maya Projects. And there's the project I'm working in at the moment, Textures, Light and Render. And the images, if we've done things correctly, should be in the images folder. Remember, this is not a movie file. We've not made a movie yet. We've only rendered out single TIFFs. So what we're looking for is a bunch of TIFFs, 99 to be exact. Double click and hurrah, there they are. Okay, so Textures, Light and Render version 3.0.0.1. And if I go down this list, I should have everything up to 99. And they've rendered out, they're about 1 megabyte each. Now, in order to open them, we're going to have to launch a new piece of software. And this is a piece of software that I think comes free with Maya. And you're going to have to find this. So go to the Start menu, and unfortunately you can't see it down here, but it's in the Search Programs and Files window at the bottom. And the program is called FCheck. FCheck. And there it is. I found it. FCheck is there. I'm now launching it, and I'm now going to ask FCheck to find those images. So I'm going to File, Open Image, Let's start with the desktop, and then let's go to Systems folder, Documents, Maya, Projects, and there it is, Textures, Light and Render. And there's the images folder, and that's what we want. And basically what you do is you just click on the first image in the list and open it. And FCheck will now open up that one image. So now we can see that image in FCheck. Now that only gets us part way. The next thing we have to do is go File, Open Animation, and then click again on that first image. It's slightly laborious, and then open it. And now FCheck will buffer the images. It's now scrolling through these images. A lot of problems with my the modeling of my table, I'm afraid. And we're going to zoom in to the fruit bowl. And this is really, rendering is where the rubber meets the road. We can see all kinds of problems now with my modeling here. These edges are too hard. I'm going to need another, even though I've beveled the edge of this table, I really need another bevel on the edge there. I need bevels here, and you can actually see that this fruit bowl needs to be higher resolution because we're getting very, very hard edges here. And actually we might have to go into a different renderer. We might have to use Mental Ray in order to render it instead of the Maya renderer. But this gives you an idea of how to go about it. So this is what I mean by doing a batch render. You're literally doing a batch of still frames and then turning that into a movie file. And of course you can take these rendered images and you can import them into Premiere or Final Cut or even QuickTime Pro and then export them as a QuickTime or any kind of movie file that you want. So this is the kind of thing that you're going to have on your animation reel, is finished rendered files. At least that's the idea. At the end of the course you should have pretty rendered images for your demo reel. Okay, so that's how to make a batch render. In the I was going to say in the next video, but actually that is the end of this week's exercise. So what you should do is go ahead and see if you can get to this stage. So you've got to create your textures, you've got to create your lights, and then you've got to animate your camera, and then you've got to do a batch render. It's quite a lot to get through, but next week we'll be focusing on animation and it'll be all much more fun.